This big Royal Air Force transport plane is ferrying 2,500 gallons of oil into Zambia. On the 2,000-mile round trip from the African coast, the plane will use 4,000 gallons of fuel. Strange economics? Yes, very strange. But this is a strange airlift. An airlift on which the whole economy of Zambia is dependent. For this Central African country, with no ports and poor rail and road communications, had 95% of its oil and petrol supplies suddenly cut off by neighboring Rhodesia as a result of sanctions following Rhodesia's illegal declaration of independence. Overnight, Zambia's traffic, power supplies and industries, especially the vital copper mining areas, were threatened with a complete collapse through lack of fuel. The nearest oil supplies were 1,000 miles away at the seaport of Dar es Salaam in Tanzania. Tankers could bring oil to this port in thousands of tons, but the problem was transporting it to landlocked Zambia with no through railway and only the poorest dirt roads. So giant transport planes were the only answer, ferrying the oil and petrol in drums. First, hundreds of empty drums had to be got to Dar es Salaam by ship, rail and plane from Aden and Mombasa. Within hours of the order for Operation Oil Lift to start, the RAF had moved into Dar es Salaam's civil airport and set up the airlift headquarters. 2 Britannia transport planes were already on their way from Britain, bringing ground crews and servicing equipment. Suitable airfields for landing these giant planes in Zambia was a problem. But the Britannia had to be used because of its carrying capacity. But more important, it could fly the round trip of 2,000 miles without refueling. An important factor when fuel was just what Zambia hadn't got. Within 48 hours of the starting order, Operation Oil Lift had begun. Forklift trucks flown out from Britain and now operated by Africans were used for loading drums of petrol and oil into the holds of the first 2 Britannias. These planes, which usually carry service personnel overseas, had been stripped of their seating accommodation. About 55 drums of oil, each holding 44 gallons, were jammed into the hold space and then securely lashed. With nearly 2,500 gallons of oil aboard, the first plane on the oil lift took off for Lusaka, the capital of Zambia. The 1,000-mile trip would take 3 hours, and with quick turnarounds at each end, the planes could complete 2 round trips a day. Relief air crews had arrived at Dar es Salaam, so each crew would fly 1 round trip of 6 hours a day. These RAF oil lift planes were operating to and from civilian airfields, so the local airfields handled their flight control. But the RAF had to bring out from Britain and set up their own radio links between the Zambian airfields and their headquarters at Dar es Salaam for management control. In this way, there were the minimum of delays in the movement of crews, equipment, and the day-to-day running of the airlift. Special mobile freight platforms, also flown out from Britain, were used for unloading the Britannias. Zambia's essential fuel oil requirements are 3,500 tons a week. Within 7 days of starting the airlift, 6 RAF Britannias were bringing in 700 tons of oil a week. A most welcomed and valuable contribution, but still only 1/5 of Zambia's requirements. Royal Canadian Air Force transport planes were soon on the scene to bring in another 350 tons of oil a week from the Congo. American freight planes were soon also operating from the Congo. Within a fortnight of the beginning of this operation, started by the RAF, fuel oil of all types was flowing into the Zambian depots in lorry loads of 44-gallon drums. The flow had to be kept up, but still, the total amount being brought in wasn't enough. As the drums were emptied, the empties were shuttled back to the waiting planes to be returned for refilling at Dar es Salaam. As well as by air, oil was also coming into crippled Zambia by road from the coast. 250 tankers pounded up and down the 1,000-mile route. Soon, with all this concentrated effort and money being spent, the pressure on Zambia's oil-starved economy began to ease. Petrol for the non-essential motorist was still rationed to 1 gallon a week, and it will remain so for some time to come. But for the essential services and industry, particularly the copper mines, Zambia's major and most valuable industry, there was a steady flow of fuel oil again. Like the Berlin airlift, which began in 1948, when all road and rail transport to and from the German city was halted by the Russians for almost a year, this Central African airlift was ordered so as to prevent Zambia's economy from sliding into chaos. A chaos which could spread rapidly and bring misery to millions in an area already politically unstable. The RAF's part in this airlift was an emergency operation to keep Zambia supplied with oil until civilian freight planes could be chartered and organized for the job. With the flight programs working, the supply of drums assured, the loading and unloading of planes running like clockwork, the 150 men and women of the RAF employed on this airlift had done the main part of their job. Seven civilian charter planes were on their way from Britain, and after a fortnight of running Operation Oil Airlift, the RAF Transport Command began to pull out. The operation would continue with civilian aircraft until the embargo was lifted and oil began to flow into Zambia again by the usual channels. An expensive operation costing Britain £750,000 a month, which works out at about £2 a gallon to freight oil into Zambia. Oil which at most would sell at about 4 shillings a gallon. Strange economics? On the surface, yes. But no more strange than buying expensive drugs to save the life of a child.